Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to the last session here, and this session is on ensuring safe and reliable zero-emission vehicle. So we have talked about a lot of things over these 2 days, and mostly it has been technical. ICT is known for that. This session, I assure you, most of us are already saturated with a lot of technical inputs. So this is more about awareness and then demystifying and debunking some of the myths that are around zero emission vehicles. Let me call upon all the panelists now. Mr. Audun Garberg, Vice Director and Head of Climate Department, City of Oslo. Mr. Subrata Mitra, Senior Vice President, Government Relations and Policy, Ather Energy Limited. Dr. Shankar Akella, Principal Consultant, Siemens Industry Software and ex-GM from Ashok Leyland. And we will be, he's here. So, Mr. Chanpreet Singh Sethi, co-founder and CEO, BluWheelz Mobility. So we have a good and diverse panel. We have software supplier, we have policy maker with us here, we have two-wheeler manufacturer, and then three-wheeler logistics service provider. So before we deep dive into the questions, let me give some context. So in the morning also we had a presentation and we saw that India is now having, it's still a start, but we are still having now significant number of zero emission vehicles on ground. And whenever there is a new technology, it is always scrutinized very deeply. So you will always see there will be incidents in the newspaper. You will see incidents like, okay, certain two-wheeler, certain four-wheeler electric has gotten has caught fire. So things like that. Now you will not read that certain CNG vehicle has caught fire because that's now normal. So that's the goal of this session, that what is actually true, how what is the safety behind these vehicle and how reliable are those. So the two words today I'll be focusing on are safety and reliability. What do I mean when I say safety? It means the vehicle itself. It means the batteries containment of fire. It's like containment of and prevention of battery thermal runaway. It means because electric vehicles have faster acceleration, so the driving patterns might change. So safety also covering that. And then when we come to reliability, and there I mean the consumer should have trust that my vehicle will be able to perform well or better than an ICE vehicle in terms of power, and then in terms of range also. If the OEM says that your vehicle will run for 300-400 kilometers, then the consumer should have that confidence, and I think that will enable more ZEV uptake. So with this background, and so there are some other challenges which are specific to India. So we have the wide geography, we have plains of the desert versus the mountains in Himachal and Ladakh region. Variation of temperature. Sometimes we have roads that can be called off-roads, and and dust. So all these things, it is good to design a vehicle for a perfect climate, but how are things happening in India? How are OEMs tackling these challenges? All right, so let's dive into the questions. Can you hear me? Yeah. So firstly, we can start with a brief round of introduction about the organizations and what role are they playing in ZEV transition and in ensuring safe and reliable EVs? Starting with you, Mr. Akella, Dr. Akella.
Hello. Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's a very pleasure to be here in this conference. So, as you introduced, I come from Siemens. I'm sure most of you know what is Siemens, but there is another part of Siemens which a lot of people doesn't know. Siemens, everybody thinks it's at least in India, thinks they make switches and motors and all those kind of things. But apart from that, there is a bigger part of Siemens which is involved in the software, which is used for the industrial software, what we call it, and it's used for the simulation of your plants, your simulation of equipment, and even product lifecycle management, and even also in the operations, the software is used. So I come from that digital industry software team, and with respect to ZEV, Siemens has two roles. One is Siemens has a direct role in the GEV. I think there is one division within Siemens which is called Smart Infrastructure, which they make the hardware and software for the charging, and also they can help people in setting up the charging infrastructure also. So that is where we play a direct role in the GEV ecosystem. And the secondary role which I am talking about is the software which we are selling as part of my team. So this software is used for the product design, manufacturing, and also during operations. We have entire life cycle which can be supported using our software. Okay, so that is what the secondary role. And coming to me, I am primarily a subject matter expert for the automotive industry, where I deal with all these three things: product design, manufacturing, and operations. But primarily, based on my background, I'm more into the product development for both electric vehicles, battery packs, and also autonomous vehicles and ADAS systems. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Audun. I'm with the city of Oslo. The city itself has a very ambitious goal of reducing the direct greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by 2030. And it's been decided by a broad majority of our city council. So we have to more or less eliminate emissions from local transport in Oslo within the next few years. So the city is encouraging the transition towards electric vehicles. And when it comes to safety, I'd like to point to one very important issue, and that's the charging of vehicles, as already mentioned. And if you go back like 20 years, you could trip over an extension cord on the pavement in Oslo because someone were parking their car in the street, and then they had this extension cord going to their neighboring house or apartment, maybe even into the window, into the living room. That's not a safe way of charging a car. So we've built a lot of publicly available charging stations, but we've also incentivized building charging in housing cooperatives. And through this grant scheme we have incentivized the building of infrastructure for more than 60,000, enabling more than 60,000 charging points in housing cooperatives. And how is this related to safety? Well, with more than 40% of the cars in Oslo being electric, people tend to charge them wherever they can. So it's really important that they have access to safe charging at home. And to get the grant from the city, which covers like a small part of the installation costs, you have to prove that all installation is done in accordance with the national laws and regulations in this area. So in that way, we enable safe charging, both on the streets and in the building cooperatives.
Yeah, thanks, Audun. I think that's one of the effort that our team here is trying to make to legally allow charging in large apartment complexes. Currently, it is not possible. Yes, continue, Subrata.
Thank you, Aviral. Subrata here from Ather Energy. Ather is primarily an electric two-wheeler manufacturing company based out of Bengaluru, Karnataka, incubated out of IIT Madras today with manufacturing facility in Tamil Nadu, with one of the largest R&D workforce in electric two-wheeler industry anywhere in the world. In Bangalore, we have more than today close to 500,000 of our two-wheelers out there on the road. And the beauty of all of them being connected is that the moment people start their day, we exactly know how much of CO2 emissions as a company we have been able to solve at that day. So by the time we all come to office, we exactly know how much of CO2 we have been able to save that, and the day just starts at 9 in the morning. So for Ather, it's a huge belief that EV, electric two-wheeler as a technology, as a product, I think is well established now in the Indian consumer. The Indian consumer has adopted in large numbers, and it's not just us. You have the established legacy players, you have startups. So today you have multiple products from different OEMs out there in the market. And as an Indian, it's also a matter of pride that this is possibly one of those rare industries where almost the entire evolution of the technology has happened within the country. Unlike the earlier generations of vehicle, ICE and others, where as a nation or as OEMs you could depend on other parts of the world to license or give you technology. I think electric two-wheeler, the Indian startups started from scratch. It's credit to them that most of the technology evolved in-house for reasons which I believe is, as a company, as an India, we see it as positive. The other two large two-wheeler markets, or I'll call manufacturing hubs, have not taken on to electric two-wheelers in the manner that they could have. One, China, their focus is largely on four-wheelers, and the other being Japan, who hasn't yet started their electric journey. So that actually made today India as a pole position when it comes to electric two-wheelers in the world. So you go across the world, the kind of offerings that electric two-wheelers, scooters that come from India is actually unmatched anywhere in the world. There are companies who possibly volumes are higher from other markets, but those are mostly used for delivery or fleet. Personal usage, electric two-wheelers, the kind of product technology offering that India is able to offer is that. So that gives us the confidence that this is one industry where, with the right policy mix, support of the government, enabling ease of doing business, India can actually emerge as a global manufacturing and a supply hub for electric two-wheelers around the world. And if I give the numbers in India alone, India is one of the world's largest two-wheeler market. Give or take, around 20 million two-wheelers are sold in India. Almost 65% of them are motorcycles, 35% of them are scooters. And if you see today, the electric two-wheeler transition which is happening is actually happening in the scooter segment. So there's actually no big change in the motorcycles yet. So there's a huge path forward for us to go. And this transition, when India does, we believe it will lead to a similar transition in the global south and other large two-wheeler markets of the world. And the global south is a very large two-wheeler market, whether it is Latin America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and so on. So this, what India does, will have a significant impact, and it will be reflecting by. So by 2030, you will see the fruits of this in other parts of the world. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thanks, Subrata, and I agree very much. Two-wheelers, I would say, in the West, they are kind of lifestyle. In India, they are lifeline. So it's always proud when we see Indian two-wheelers being exported towards Africa and all the Southeast Asian countries. And we hope same for our EV two-wheelers to happen. Yeah, now over to Mr.
Thank you, Aviral. Thank you, ICCT, for inviting me again. I think you guys are on board of me. I am Sethi. I am a co-founder of an electric mobility company called BluWheelz. We started off in 2022. We started off with two-wheelers and three-wheelers initially. I come from a trucking background. It's almost 20 years since I've been into this logistics industry, been running diesel and CNG trucks. But, I've seen this transition very, very closely For a fleet owner, for a commercial use case, I think for us, the four-wheeler and above segment, the LCV segment is what we are primarily looking at. See, because the bikes and the three-wheelers are more of a B2C game, and we probably would like to focus more on these, four-wheelers and above, the trucks, the transition. And closely following up, we've seen the technology being changed, and we were having 2,000 bikes and three-wheelers, and now we have completely changed that to four-wheelers and trucks. Now retrofitted trucks are coming in India. We're having our own share of problems, but still I think the road ahead is pretty much clearer, because given the situation, I was just checking out the AQI today and it's moderately at 87. So this is very unusual for us to see such levels in these months. I mean, obviously, this is the tipping point where things get worse every year. And I hope that, because of the transition, because of the increased number of zero-emission vehicles on the ground in Delhi NCR, I think we'll definitely have some impact of that and probably get this pollution levels down. And looking forward for the session. And regarding safety, I would say, obviously, besides these advanced driving systems and, ADAS and all, I think EVs do have some, more, I'd say, leverage points to them, because you have less moving parts. You have, pretty good control over the battery health. You've got IP67, IP68 technologies coming in. And then I think we've come a long way from where we were. And today, I think it could be more dangerous to ride a CNG vehicle at a 55-degree temperature, but not for an EV. So I think we go further and the technology improves, and then I think EVs would be much more safer and reliable. Oh, sustainable for sure. Viable, we are just trying to make a point of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chanpreet. So, continuing the discussion, I have a few questions, and just to clarify, we do not have core research on safety. Our mandate is on clean, but safe transport is again sustainable, key part of sustainable transport. So there will be few questions, but the idea is I am a layman here, and I'll behave as someone who is on a fence. We have other challenges, definitely on cost, on government can give incentives, and we have talked about all of them. So let's assume that everything else is sorted. Then is there any other friction in the decision making? So that's the idea behind. So I'll start with our OEM, Ather Energy. So Subrata, we have always in India felt like the end decision making criteria is only cost. And in case of ICE vehicle, like the mileage, how much it will cost for running. How do you see that changing? Have you seen any change in that, or are the consumer perceptions toward EV safety and reliability becoming more important in their decision making?
Thank you, Aviral. I'll first take the cost and the total cost of ownership. See, I think here the two-wheeler as a segment, electric two-wheeler, has a significant advantage over other formats, because from a TCO perspective, this is absolute common sense. Now, for some numbers, if you see the delta between, say, ICE two-wheeler and electric two-wheeler is much less compared to, say, ICE four-wheeler and a petrol four-wheeler. EV four-wheeler. So that's so. Plus, in India, the adjustment is that people, even in our fleet, almost large, significant majority, they charge the EV at home. Of course, there are fast charging infrastructure. I'll come to that. But this actually helps them to bring the total cost of ownership. They are able to recover it in a very short time. Plus, Indian two-wheeler, as you rightly said, it is not a lifestyle vehicle for a large segment. It's actually a commuter category. People use it for day-to-day purpose mobility. And if you see the scooter segment, unlike bike, the Indian scooter is a very interesting vehicle. And that's the reason it's called a family scooter. Because for most of the households, the key is literally kept on the first table. When you enter the home, the key is kept there, or it is kept on a nail hanging just next to the door. And everyone in the house drives that vehicle. So it's a very different, when you talk about vehicle, it's a personal vehicle, but it's actually a true family vehicle. Morning it will go, the mother will go drop the kid to the school, comes back, then someone goes does some shopping, comes back. Maybe the person will go to the office or come back. If you're into business, you will see, you know, the owner of the business, the staff of the business, everyone is using the same vehicle if you're in a business district and all. So the scooter does a lot of purpose, and the total cost of ownership is established. I think that's given. What now we are trying to work on is that I think two things. One, the consumer is today demanding a larger portfolio of products when they compare it with, say, a petrol scooter. So, for example, if you want to buy a scooter or a motor or a bike, you have around 10, 20, 30 different options. But possibly when you're coming in EVs, they want more numbers to be there so that they have a wider choice. And I think the industry is responding to that. Every month there are new models which are coming in. I think on the safety aspect of it, I completely agree with what Sethi said. We haven't heard a fire incident among the large established OEs, two-wheelers for the last 2 years. I think with the AIS standards, safety standards coming in, that has been plugged. The worry that still remains is that you have certain low-end assembled scooters which still come in, which are actually outside the purview of any regulation. Those are the vehicles which don't need any license to drive and all. I think what is needed is that you need to have a baseline battery safety standard across. I think that's important. So whether a vehicle is slow electric or fast electric, whether it needs a license or not, or whether you need a registration or not, irrespective of that, the safety standards needs to be a common one so that there's zero incident of fire across. That's one. And I will take a point what Audun mentioned, absolutely. As an EV consumer myself, we need to promote more fast charging and slow charging in residence so that consumer can charge their vehicle. I think that's very important. That's the transition which the EV industry is focusing on. Because if you see today, one of the determining criteria of buying an electric vehicle is whether you have charging facility at home or not. So if we don't want a scenario where consumer, if they don't have charging, they don't evaluate a vehicle at all. It will be unfair to a technology like EV. So if you are able to make charging infrastructure more prevalent, and I think what Mr. Garberg referred that if you can have a mandate of having some minimum chargers in every residential block, society, complex, RWA, I think you will be able to make charging accessible and affordable at the same time. I think this is both, and it is reliable. You need to, because people, you don't want people to start their day looking for a charging station. You want people to start the day to go to their workplace. And the first thing you want to reach your office, not find a charging station. I think we'll have to give that confidence to them. But from a reliability perspective, I think especially from incident, I think we have crossed that bridge long back.
That gives us confidence. And so it's playing more and more role with reliability and safety from the consumer perspective. So Dr. Akella, can you enlighten us on some of the technicalities, like where are we? Firstly, India, as I mentioned earlier, it can be a test lab in itself. So where are we? We have to be in line with what is happening globally in terms of standards, but also we have our own circumstances. So what is happening?
I think first look at the standards, whether it is safety standards or charging standards or reliability standards. As I think morning Mr. Baru mentioned. And also Mr. Amitabh Kant also mentioned, there are already global standards in place. We can start the best practices from there and then localize them for the Indian conditions. So that is what is happening with all these standards, like charging standards or safety standards or range standards and all. In fact, in my previous organization, when I was in Ashok Leyland, I was part of some of the charging standards. So what we have done is we have looked at European standards, American standards for a particular type of charging, and we adopted them and then localized for the Indian conditions. For example, one thing which people have to recognize is India is vast country with very, very different climatic conditions. If you go to the north, you get snow. But if you go to the south, it's very hot in the summers. So you have, if you are running vehicles, especially commercial vehicles, which are used in all parts of India, then you have to ensure that the standards also should consider all these environmental conditions and update it. So that is what happening. But maybe the pace of adoption and localization needs to be advanced or accelerated a little bit faster.
Okay.
So that's what I say.
So have we adopted in terms of if we keep on safety, have we adopted for two-wheelers, for four-wheelers, for
Yeah, as I think Mr. Subrata mentioned just now. So there are battery pack standards which are, I think, AIS standards. So these are all coming originally from the European standards, which are adopted and updated for Indian conditions. And ARI in Pune was working on it, and all the manufacturers also part of those standards committees. And they have done that. Yeah.
Great. And Subrata, you mentioned about that there is some concern about assembled scooters. So, and they are not in purview of regulation. So, riddle me, like, isn't everything greater than 250 watt if it is powered? Is it not a two-wheeler?
So we have something what is called this slow speed scooters, and that's it. We understand they are, for livelihood, they are slow speed and all. All that we are seeing is that from a battery safety standard, if they can be brought under this AIS 156 was Dr. Akella was referring to, which is the common baseline of battery safety standard, then everyone in the ecosystem is assured that this is a baseline is met, so you don't have to worry about any fire incident. Because otherwise, if you see today, where I'm coming from is when there is a fire, it is EV has got fire. No one gets in, whether it's a slow vehicle, whether it's fast, whether it was less than 250, more than 250. EV fire is an EV fire, and whether we like it or not, it gets multifold attention in the media, and it catches a wildfire of its own. So I think one we can do is that to address there is no such incident is to have a common baseline. And because in India you almost have such a large two-wheeler market where the industry is completely complying with the standard has delivered, the incidents are almost negligible, nearly zero. I think we should just expand this across so that then there is no concern of any risk coming in, if that's it. And I think on the standard, I will say what at Ather what we have done is when electric two-wheeler, when we first came out with this performance scooters, we found the charging standard was something which was outside. So we had to bring it as it in, and it did not meet the requirements. It needed, we wanted a charging standard which is almost like CCS2, which will do AC, DC, slow charge, slow and fast. And that's when we came out with this Type 7 standard. It was innovated by Ather. We opened it up. Government of India has been kind enough. BIS adopted it as a national standard. And today we have a large number of companies, OEMs, charging point operators. And the good news is a lot of them from outside India are evaluating that as a charging standard because that meets the environment of what is in the south in terms of electricity availability and all that. So we believe that EV is an area where not just the technology, but I think the standards also India will be able to contribute to the larger global auto ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a good learning that we can also export the standards. Yeah, so we talked about fire, vehicle fire, and then the social media fire. So Audun, one question to you. I was reading about about what causes fire, what happens. So my results were that the vehicles are very safe. There are various procedures, they are tested, then there are various standards. But what happens is the main difference, if there is any short circuit if any one of the cells get damaged and the fire starts, then it is difficult to control it. Then your vehicle will keep on fuming, and that's where the issue comes in. While in case of ICE, firefighters and first responders are able to handle it. So because you have a large number of EVs there, has there been any kind of protocols, guidelines or training for first responders or fire marshals or others when they respond to these kind of events?
Yes, and I think you're very right that the social media catches fire even more than the cars. when it comes to this. And just a few years ago, the Norwegian Directorate for Civil Protection commissioned an assessment of all car fires in Norway to see whether or not electric vehicles had a higher portion of these fires, and the results was very clear that the proportion of electric vehicles were much lower than the amount of electric vehicles in the car park would imply. So that's an important backdrop to this discussion as well. There's been. I think it's fair to say that maybe 1 or 2 decades ago, there was a bit of anxiety, both among the owners and not least in the fire departments, of how to handle this. So there's been a lot of training, and today they have much more knowledge of it. They've been testing fires and so on. And what they're saying is that these type of fires are not more dangerous for them to handle, but they are different to handle. So that's the short story of that.
Great. So I think then we can study those protocols and procedures and share it with our firefighters and counterparts here. Yes, please.
I think when Ashok Leyland started electric bus operations in Ahmedabad, first thing we did is we trained the fire staff, all the fire station staff. They were all called to one hotel there, and we trained them on how to handle the fires. And we had actually probably first, there is a safety officer specifically for EV buses. So he developed the training material and everything, and it was used later on in other places where Ashok Leyland is running the EV buses.
That's awesome to know.
You can get more information from Karthik. Okay, he is the one who pioneered the program.
We'll need that document, and then maybe we will share it with.
He is ready to share.
Yes. All right. So, Chanpreet ji, I have a uncle named Ben. He said, "With great power comes great responsibility." So EVs have higher acceleration, and I don't know whether it's a stereotype or reality, but we know that commercial vehicle drivers, especially heavy-duty ones, maybe they are under a pressure to reach or perform their meet some metrics or other things, but the driving is harsh, even with the ICE vehicle. So, are you having some kind of special training for these for your staff, for the drivers there, to how do you shift them from ICE to EVs?
See, there are 2-3 aspects to it. I mean, obviously, if we'll talk about the safety first, and then probably there's this mindset shift, which is more important than anything else, because, from gas to EVs, the biggest shift is that they're not going to make extra money, right? And it's very difficult for us to convince them to actually get on a vehicle which will never give them an extra buck, right? So, but talking about safeties, I tell you that, we were the first ones to buy the Tata ACVs. We were the first ones to buy the iShare ones. We were the first ones to buy the Ashok Leyland Switch EVs. And with every CEO, be it Mahesh, be it Srinivas sir, whoever it was, before buying the vehicles, my simple request or suggestion was that before we actually deploy these, darlings on the road, let's just have a training session to all my train the trainer kind of a game where I have a master driver. He must be prepared and equipped with all the knowledge which is required to actually run this baby. Because what happens is that they all have this mindset of running a simple plug and play CNG diesel vehicles, and they don't really know. I mean, you're very right about the acceleration, but at the same time, it has its cost effects, right? It when you accelerate an EV, the degeneration is faster and you'd get lesser of the range. So we'd have to give them a certain range. A proper slab in which they can apply. Could be like 40 kilometers to 60 for a 4-wheeler. For a 3-wheeler is much lesser. And obviously in Delhi NCR, for an intra-city kind of an operation, speed is not an issue, but it's the rush, which, because, given the customer expectations of getting things delivered, 30 minutes and 10 minutes, and I don't know what is coming next. But so we are definitely very conscious about it. We do regular driver trainings, and before putting their foot on the vehicle, we make sure that the driver at least has good certain experience over the ICE vehicles, and then obviously runs these EV vehicles for at least 5 or 4 days without load. So this is our standard SOP. We've got about 500 of these 4-wheelers, and I think even when we had 10, we made sure that we'd not deploy the vehicle directly to the client without giving training right from OEM, and some SOPs which were in-house built for our better unit economics and to get better range, to make him realize that there is a extra superpower in this vehicle, that you can actually regenerate your energy that has never been there in a diesel vehicle. So how do you actually brake the vehicle? How do you actually make use of that? So all of that is it's a very comprehensive kind of a program where we have before we deploy the vehicles. Other than that, when I talk about the mindset shift, see, before safety, it is the employability of the driver, right? First, we'd have to make him aware that how superior this vehicle is. So as I mentioned that, if you don't have any moving parts, the suspension is as good as an AC train, right? And for them, coming from, their backgrounds, you'd see they'd be running 10, 8, 9 years old vehicles with worst of suspension and worst of roads. Sorry for my words, but that's the truth of our city, right? So when we actually convince them, so there are some pointers of safety and comfort, right? EVs do have, they're inherently automatic, right? They don't have any gear shift mechanism and all. It's just plug and play. Second, because it's a smart vehicle, it's an IoT connected vehicle, they also get to know their scorecards. So I'll tell you that we've got a mechanism where we rate our driver basis if they're running rash or not. We've got dash cams. Companies like Mitra and others have actually come up with us and partnered us and told us that we could place a dash cam which could tell you, if the driver is in fatigue or if it is drunk or whatever. So we've come a long way, right? And because of EVs being that smart, the drivers themselves are also proving a part. I mean, we have an incentive program that if he, gets best in class range, if he delivers all his good within the stipulated time period, then he's incentivized over his salary. So that's how you actually make them realize it's not only about gyan, right? You can't just tell them that you'd have to be very safe and secure because too many lives are at risk. But no, you'd have to incentivize that because that is their job, that is from where they earn. So we take both in hands, right? For my management, for my operating managers, it is I'd say the sensitivity which we play. But for a driver, I think we go deep down and incentivize on his his earnings, and that's how we create an impact in his life. And I believe that there are much more things which could be done from a government perspective, where I think we've talked about the charging infrastructure, and the only reason I always talk that we need government support for charging infrastructure, because for commercial vehicles we don't have these beautiful malls, we don't have these 5-star hotels where you can just take down your truck and get it parked, right? We would want that the government should have these yards, these open spaces where our drivers could actually go and park and get charged, and they're not creating any nuisance for per se on the road because of their charging needs, right? So certain things which are in-house, but certain things which are absolutely external, and we would require support for that. But I think we've made a good start, and 4-wheelers and 6-wheelers for that matter are much more safer than this slow moving 2-wheeler, which was the reason why I actually opted out of this 2-wheeler game, because that's a menace. I mean, they don't require a helmet, they don't require a license. I think, so one is a requirement, one is an obligation, right? So there's a very thin line in it. So for me, I mean, I am pretty sure that with all the technologies and smartness of these EV vehicles, I think 4-wheelers and 6-wheelers are much, much safer than the other form factors. Thank you.
Sure. So, on the reliability front on charging infrastructure, we'll be covering that. And as you pointed out, driver, the human factor also needs to be trained and improved. I was talking to Subrata and we were half joking that we need a Pradhan Mantri driving Sikhao Yojana for everyone, not just EV drivers. Okay, on a serious note, so human factor is somewhat dodgy currently. We need training. what is happening in software with these ZEVs? We are getting an opportunity to shift the whole approach. So how is software making the ZEVs safer?
So, I mean, if I understand, or if I rephrase the question, how software is helping the GEVs more safer? Yes. That's what you're asking. So, see, one thing is, I think we talked about some of the fire accidents or fire incidents which are happening with electric vehicles, so GEVs. So if you want to test these things in the physical world using prototypes, it's going to be very costly and also dangerous. It can affect the people who are operating all these things. So one way to solve the problem is the simulation. You can use simulation to test these vehicles in simulation and then do, let's say you are doing a 10 physical tests. Instead of that, you can do with simulation a lot of tests and then with 2 or 3 tests with the physical prototypes. So that is one way the software is helping these become more safer. And the software is also helps you in testing lot more scenarios than these 10 scenarios what you're thinking about. Because it's virtual and you can easily simulate and you can test those things. And you can even repeat those things a number of times, whatever you want. And today the software is pretty accurate, I would say. For example, if you take the battery thermal runaway, most of the software, not just Siemens, other softwares also, they will be able to simulate battery runaway very accurately for different types of chemistries. You change the chemistry and you can even do the thermal runaway with that. And once you validate those things, then you can run more number of simulations by making small changes to the same set of things. And similarly, battery thermal propagation, runaway is one, it happens in one cell and when it starts, and then how this thermal runaway propagates to other cells. That's also you can easily simulate using the simulations. When it comes to GEVs, let's say there is a lot of flooding. Today I just heard someone said, Gurgaon, there is a flooding in the morning. So what happens if the electric vehicle is under flooded? Will there be any short circuit and will it going to cause any problems? Those things you can do simulation and test it, how it is happening. And you don't need to do physical testing to do that. Okay, that is what software is making the safer, I would say.
So reducing the cost and then reducing the time taken. Yeah, and you mentioned about flooding. So we'll slowly transition into reliability. But before that, so recently because it's monsoon, so I saw a video where we had an e-bus. I think it was in Mumbai, and it was heading through the flooded road while the ice was broken down because of the air intake choking or something else. So yeah, I at least anecdotally, I think these are the EVs. They are able to handle the monsoon water ingress and other problems.
Actually, as per regulation, every bus has to go under a water wading test. So you have to prove to the regulator that it went through the water wading test, and then they will give the homologation certificate. And so you have to do the test. And
because we don't have air intake, so I think the amount of water it can take is little bit high. Yeah. It's not a submarine, it's still a bus. Okay, moving to reliability, and before we move to Chanpreet ji, I'll continue with you. You mentioned that we can even check how the vehicle is performing in terms of battery performance, range. So when an OEM says that my vehicle will give 500 kilometers of range, and that's an ARAI number on MIDC, then we have real world values. So how close is the software, and what is the delta, why it happens when that is translated to real world, and why is the difference between MIDC and real world so wide?
Yeah. First of all, let's first take the real world data and MIDC. Okay, so the real world, you have to see how close the MIDC to the real world driving conditions. Probably it will be only 80%. The drive cycle MIDC would be close to the real world. It may be capturing the real world scenarios 80% only. There will be another 20% which are not captured, and because of that reason, you see the difference between the real world and MIDC. That is one thing. And second thing, within that, when I say the differences is, especially with EV, driving behavior is one very important thing when you are looking for the range calculations. So an aggressive driver and a conservative driver, you will get a different energy consumption values in the real world itself. I'm not talking about simulation. In the real world itself, if there is an aggressive driver and if it's a conservative driver, how they are braking, how fast they are braking and all. So that kind of impacts the regenerative braking, and you will see different sets of values for the range of the energy consumption values. Okay, that is one important thing, driving behavior. And second thing is, as I said, the drive cycle differences is the other one. With respect to simulation, we will be able to get with MIDC very close values. I would say, depending on the model, again, the model can be fine-tuned. You get 99% accurate with those things. It up to the, I would say, the modeler, simulator, the guy who is simulation, the experience of that guy, that can make it 99% accurate for the range calculations.
Yes, and it's very helpful for the startups. And I heard founder of Ather here in one of the events that how Siemens, some of the softwares are helping them reiterate and improve the product in a very fast-paced manner. Okay, so Chanpreet ji, in terms of logistics operation, downtime is killer. We need 100% uptime always. So what has been your experience when you are operating this 100% EV fleet versus if you are operating or your counterparts are operating ICE fleet? What is the difference? And if there are any breakdowns, what are those key pain points, key issues that happen?
So I'll break it down in two parts, the pre-ops and the post-ops. So the pre-ops is that for an ICE vehicle, when you go get down to a customer like an Asian Paints and you tell them that you're going to deliver their goods across the city, and you do a milk run and you'll probably take from their mother warehouse and you'll distribute it to their distributors. It's very easy for a driver to actually understand the route, and puts his brain that he's gonna come up with a tank full. You're gonna load, just get it delivered, and probably once he's coming back, he could just take the fuel and that's done, right? But for us, for an EV to be deployed at a customer, we need a thorough trial, which is like, we have to check the route for proper charging. We have to see the dead miles from our yard to the customer. And then obviously once that is done, even if it is, making sense that you have ample charging, then you'd have to compute that time with the turnaround time for that deliveries to be done. Right? Because let's say you just have 4 hours to get things delivered in a city like Delhi, because every distributor wants to get their goods before 2 p.m. right? So you'd have to manage and calculate the time versus the delivery time versus the charging time and the idle time, right? So the pre-ops is something which took us a lot of time, and we've burnt a lot of patient capital, I would say, to actually reach at a spot where we were very comfortable and efficient enough to get EVs on ground for an intra-city delivery. But for post-ops, I think till today, we sometimes face issues like, the deep discharge of batteries, where the drivers don't understand that they have to get a fast charge before 20% of degeneration. They would just, drive it down till 10 or 5 or 8 and then probably try a fast charge, but then it would not work, and then they'll be calling some charge on wheels or something like that. So still, I mean, the driver, after so much of driver training and everything, but then when you have a used case, which is an ad hoc kind of a requirement, right? He's gone for a route, but then there is some urgency which has made him detoured, and it's something new for him. So then the charging becomes a very real issue, right? Because you've exhausted your range and you don't know where exactly. Although we've come up with an app which has API integration with every CPU possible in the country, but still I think there is a lot of human intervention which is required once the driver gets, because there's a lot of anxiety on his mind. He's got loads of full load of vehicle, and then he's not able to come back. So one, charging issue. Second, I think, when the vehicles were starting to get on, I mean, we've had our share of GB by T and then the CCS2s and all. So I've seen that, even the OEMs are learning. So I would not, a very dear friend of mine has shut shop, the 3-wheeler I will not name. He's a very, very fine, intelligent gentleman. But then there were some problems of technology and funding and so on and so forth. For us as fleet owners, we had to bet on whatever was available. We did that with the slow speed. We did that with the three-wheel. We did that with indigenous Indian brands. But I think current situation, the reliability factor has being good enough because of the entry of these legacy players, the OEMs which were there, which are, for about good 50, 60, 100 odd years, with have their network, have done their homework well, done as Shankar sir said about the simulations and everything. See, because then there is a bandwidth, then these guys just don't launch it for the sake of it. They're not startups, right? So for us fleet owners, I think the entry of these legacy players like Leland and Tatas and Eicher, I think now we are much more comfortable, and we really look forward that we'd be able to meet our uptimes. Rather, we have gone a step ahead and we are cross-utilizing our vehicles and running these vehicles for beyond 20 hours a day, which was never possible in any EV format earlier. So because of the CCS2 capability, because of the information through IoTs about cell disbalancing and everything, we've been able to cross utilize and used our assets, and we're juicing them as maximum as possible. So the reliability factor, I think, was an issue when you had startups, when you had smaller brands. But I think with the bigger brands, I think the challenge is almost covered. And lastly, I think the remaining challenge is now with the retrofitted game. Right, I've been the first one to buy a retrofitted vehicle where I actually got it written down on a contract that we'd be able to get 90% uptime guarantee from Kalyani, and they had to give it. It was the very first time for an OEM to write down and tell you that our vehicle would run. If it doesn't, we'd have to pay you for the downtime. So that's the kind of, you would have to back your baby. Otherwise, it's very difficult for a fleet owner to, buy such an expensive vehicle and then probably get stranded on the road because of its downtime and breakdown. So I think for the smaller vehicles, for the LCV segment which we are applying, this reliability factor is pretty well sorted. But maybe for the battery swap and for the heavy vehicles and for the trailer tractors, I think we're still pretty much on the road to get this sorted, and probably waiting for the biggest of OEMs to bring in. I mean, I'm welcoming BYDs and others of the world to bring down the best-in-class technologies to just get rid of. Because elsewhere, I think we've had gentlemen from Europe, we've seen China. I've personally experienced that it's almost 40% of commercial trucking being converted into electric there. So reliability as a concept is not a challenge, but for our country, because of given the situation, given the OEM standard and the time it takes to actually create a vehicle, is something which you have to take care of.
Okay, thanks. So I noted there were a lot of points, but I noted two very important ones. So first was, in terms of reliability, the vehicle is done. It's more than reliable, and the only uncertainty or unreliability remains on the charging infrastructure or the charging opportunity availability. And the second the part was, thanks for answering the question which I didn't even ask yet on retrofitting. So I wanted to ask whether who we put the onus on and how it can be reliable. But then you answered that we need a written contract from the person who is doing retrofitting. Yeah, so thanks for that. And we have about 5 minutes left. I will open the floor to audience question, and then one last rapid fire question. Yes, please. You introduce yourself and then, yeah.
There was a statement from CEO of Maruti that when Bharat NCAP safety standards came into play, people, because of the cost differential between two-wheelers and four-wheelers, people stopped using four-wheelers because of like 8 times of price difference. So currently, just an opinion I wanted to know, what is the cost of safety? Like I think Sumant also a little bit touched on that. What is the price of the safety and when compared to this transition? Because four-wheelers are definitely safer than two-wheelers because the amount of accidents would reduce. Even if it does, the kind of impact it has would reduce. Just an open question.
Maybe Subrata will take it, but before that, one comment. I think vehicle itself does not play that much role. The two-wheeler and four-wheeler, two-wheeler is less safer because it runs on the same road as the fast-running four-wheeler. So maybe that's the planning. Some kind of it also plays some role. But yeah, Subrata.
See, two-wheeler from a safety perspective, you see, I will say the electric two-wheeler, these are born electric, you are able to bring in lot more newer safety standards, safety technologies into it, rather than retrofitting, say, into a old ICE two-wheeler. So even in our own fleet, for example, you have things like fall safe. A very simple thing, in the event the vehicle skids and falls, the engine is cut off, the motor is cut off. So it's not that a Samaritan, when they come to help you, end up actually accelerating the vehicle while lifting the vehicle. Small thing we could do. Similarly, there is an immediate SOS to your family on here, and if the vehicle is lying for beyond a certain, say, certain time, we know then it is, something bigger and not someone just fell down and lifted. So what I'm trying to say is that in two-wheeler we have been able to do a large amount of that. But please understand, two-wheeler in itself, we have to, safety is a focus area, I think, of the entire auto industry. I think that they have taken it apart. You have recently heard government is making, helmets. Earlier it was one helmet mandatory. Now they are talking about two making mandatory. I think somewhere we'll also need the enforcement and the discipline. Right now, the industry is trying to push through vehicle engineering and technology as much. I think somewhere the responsibility of safe driving must also come from the society and consumer at large in terms there. Enforcement, education, there's a huge amount of education happening, but somewhere we'll have to get certain amount of enforcement and that in, because it is actually parameters of all of them get in. Vehicle engineering is something that we are fixing, but there's an issue of road engineering, there's the issue of education, there's an issue of enforcement. I think all that will ensure the safety aspect comes, but we are able to improve the safety level, I think, of the vehicle significantly there, at least in electric, that's what we are seeing.
Sure. Any other question? Yes, please keep your question brief. We are running against time.
Yes, I have a very brief question regarding if we are finding that as far as informal sector is concerned, it is also gaining traction as far as EVs are concerned. But there are quality challenges as far as retrofitting it with software, with the motors and with the batteries. So basically there are challenges. For example, we don't have labs for thermal and for durability and for these climate factors as far as retrofitted vehicles are concerned. And the government is promoting them. So do you see any kind of risk as far as going forward?
Okay. I think Charanjit ji, how are we handling these? How are we ensuring the testing of retrofitted vehicles? I think homologation process is same.
I think, for us in a commercial bigger vehicle segment, I think it's not very easy to launch a retrofitted product. It's properly homologated, it's passed through ARAI, and then there are these bigger companies, because we've seen initially there were too much of mushrooming of companies coming up with a simple kit from China and telling that, ICE engines could be. But then there is a regulation, then there is a policy draft in the, the FAME 3 as well about retrofitting, that it's not very easy to, get your kits registered, because it's not just simply the kit. When you club it with the vehicle, it becomes a complete ecosystem, and that has to be passed legally through a compliant channel, which is ARAI, right? So I think for us, we've been approached by too many players, but we only got along with Kalyani because of two reasons. Obviously, one, because of the bandwidth they have, the kind of testing and the measures they would have taken for the vehicle to be safe at the ground. Second, obviously, the deep pockets they have to actually use the best-in-class products. So that these are two factors which we as fleet owners assess. But obviously, for an informal, economy, I think there might not be any checks and and we request government to actually play a very big part, because in retrofitting, it could be a big disaster in making, because a simple hack or a simple mismanagement of any electrical network or process, it could lead to a disaster. I'll just give you a very, very on the ground example that one of our drivers, he actually put in a light bulb at the end of the container box in Tata Ace, and he, tampered with the wire harnessing, the original wire harnessing. So, we had to catch it up. By chance, we got to know about it. Otherwise, it was a disaster. Imagine that, because this is what the informal segment has to be checked upon. And I think this is where we feel, these regulations like ARAI and other homologation, compliances would play and kick in. And we think that government is really very, very serious about it. Otherwise, there would have been too many retrofitters being given accorded as certified. So there's hardly any. So let's see.
Yeah, thanks, Chanpreet. Rest of the questions you can take with the panelists outside. Last question, because Audun is our guest. So looking forward to the future, we have less number of EVs right now. You have a lot, and from a lot more years of age, maybe 5, 6 or 7 years. So your vehicle's battery may be running towards end of life. So what is the plan for that? Leave us on that note.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and we have some national policies in place to take care of this. So we have this, when a car ends its life, you can hand it in. We have a system to take care of the cars. You get a return, a sum of money. So you have a clear incentive to not leave it in the garage. And I believe there is a lot of opportunities here, both in recycling and reuse of the batteries. We have now a new industry that's have started in Norway called Hydrovolt, who recycles the valuable materials in the batteries. And one of our major industrial companies are one of the biggest owners, investors in this. So I believe in the future we will see much more business opportunities both in reuse and recycling of batteries.
So we'll be closely following up what happens with your batteries. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Shankar, Audun, Subrata, and Chanpreet ji, and all the audience. And I think we are at the end of 2 days ICTS 2025. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.